Welcome, and I will call the regular meeting of the town council to order on July 22nd at 5 p.m. We have before that, I would just like to extend, I think, on behalf of council, our congratulations to the Plaid Committee, the Rotaract group that put on Plaid Days. I think they did an excellent job. They even got the weather to cooperate, the jet boats, no accidents that I heard of. So it was even better that way. So thank you to Rotaract and the rest of the volunteers that worked on that project. So we have the agenda in front of us. Are there any additions or deletions?
I have none, your worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Then would council put forth motion. Councillor Good?
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor? Okay, Mr. Scammellharn's in favor on virtual there, so it is carried. We have the minutes of our June 24th regular council meeting. Did anybody notice any edits for those minutes? If not, would someone put forth a motion? Deputy Mayor? Maybe Deputy Mayor moves that council adopt the minutes of June 24th, 2024, the regular council meeting as presented.
Yeah.
Sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of that motion? Great, it is carried. Public hearings, we don't have any today. However, we have presentation from the Sagatawa Friendship Society. And if they could come forward and state the names of the presenters and press the button so it's red and you're good to go.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Marissa Gelder, the Executive Director of Sagatawa.
Hi, I'm Krista Park Stefanik. I'm the chair of the Sagatawa Board of Directors.
So we just wanted to discuss questions that were brought forward at the last council meeting. So I do have some points to talk through, and then if there's any questions, we're definitely happy to answer questions. So just a little bit of an overview of the shelter. So the shelter is one program of Sagatawa. We currently have 21 different programs, and with the shelter being one of them. We also run the mobile outreach unit that's funded by the town of Peace River in Northern Sunrise County. We have 2 new contracts with PRCC that we're facilitating to strengthen the partnership there. As well as youth programming and family programming. We really have the full continuum of programming for all ages. So Sagatawa has operated the shelter since April 2020. The shelter is an emergency program with the goal of providing safety and basic needs support. This includes a safe place to sleep, 2 meals a day, access to laundry facilities, and personal care items. The shelter also acts as a gateway to other available support services and programs that Sagatawa offers and other community agencies. We do a lot of referrals for our clients to other agencies. So during the last town council meeting, we did request a letter of support, and there was some questions, as well as some conversations that happened at the council level that we would like to address as well. So for stats at the shelter, we track how many individual clients are there as well as the service visits. So service visits happen each time a client comes into the shelter and completes an intake. So that can happen multiple times a day. Every time a client leaves the shelter, when they come back, they have to complete the intake process. So that could happen several times a day. So service visits aren't, it's per day. So it can be a little challenging to get the full picture. But from May 1st of 2023 to April 30th of 2024, we've had 495 individual clients access the shelter. We've had over 3,800 service visits during the summer months. So the summer months are May to October. And then the winter months, so November to April, we've had over 7,500 service visits. And at our shelter, we have a capacity of 28 mats. So the shelter is being operated out of our old location. It hasn't moved to us to our new location, and as of right now, there are no plans to move it. And as far as tracking where clients are from, we could give an educated guess as where clients are from, but that's not something we track. Our funder doesn't require that. And keeping up with additional stats when our funders don't require that is not something that we get our staff to do. Also, we had some questions around what is considered local to Peace River when we're looking at clients at the shelter. Is that clients that are residents of Peace River or residents of the surrounding area, which include like the different counties, Grimshaw, and the First Nations. And then if they are identifying as local to Peace River, how long do we consider them? Once they live in Peace River, how long are they considered to be local? Just for some insights into that, we have some of our clientele that have been homeless on the streets of Peace River for, I've been with Sayatow in different capacities for 15 years, and some of the clients have been there that long as well. So is that considered local as well? So we just had some questions around that also. And then a question came up about how long individuals can stay at the shelter. So we don't have a maximum number of days that they can stay. They can stay as long as needed. Our hope is that it is a short-term stay. Unfortunately, some of our clients, that's not the reality. Often when we see shelters that have a target number of days that the clients can stay are in bigger centers where there's other shelters that they can access. If we don't allow them in our shelter, the next closest shelter is Grand Prairie. So if they're not with us, they're on the street. And then there was some questions about the grant information. So I did put that in my letter to you guys. This grant is considered emergency grant for the wildfire response in Alberta. We got this grant last year, as well as the winter funding. This wasn't something we applied for. It was actually, our community was actually identified in the action plan on homelessness in 2022. And so the government funded Peace River as one of the sites for an emergency shelter because it was needed in our community. And so one of the conditions of the grant is to get a letter from the municipality. A letter has been given prior to this for the winter response. And so we are requesting a letter as a condition of the funding that we've received for the summer months. The amount of funding we've received from the government for the summer months is $232,000. So that keeps us fully staffed, 2 meals a day for the summer months. And then when we go into winter months, we will get a new grant contract. So as of right now, the grant contracts with the government are 6 months. And I did put in the objectives and outcomes as well as the outcome measures for stats. We do submit them to the government daily, and those are public. Because we're a rural shelter, it's not broken down for us, so we're just lumped together with other rural shelters, but that information is online. And then we do have to do narrative reporting at the end of each grant cycle, which usually includes any successes, any challenges, things like that. And then the other comments were just conversation that were happening around the table that we wanted a chance to address. So there has been a lot of conversation about Slave Lake and what happened in Slave Lake with the municipality shutting down the shelter. So we had the same funding as Slave Lake. So we do have some contact with the government there. And we need to be looking at Slave Lake as an example of what not to do. Our community is far ahead. And shutting the shelter the way that happened actually jeopardized the funding for the future and jeopardized the funding for a winter shelter as well. And then Slave Lake also seen more encampments go up. So closing the shelter didn't get rid of the homeless. It just created more encampments to come up and gave the RCMP more work. And then the next part of this is this town of Slave Lake was able to close the shelter because they ran the shelter. And we just would like to remind the community that Slave Lake, or not Slave Lake, Sagatawa is an autonomous organization. And so we are independent of the town. And so any decisions made about the shelter closure or anything about the shelter would come from the board of directors. And as of right now, Sagatawa has the correct zoning to operate the shelter, and we adhere to all of the municipal bylaws that come along with that. And then shutting down the shelter would not only affect the clientele that we serve, but it would also mean that 10 people lose their employment. Typically during the summer months, we have 10 employees, and that increases to around 14 during the summer months or the winter months when we're open 24 hours a day. There was also questions around goal setting with clients. So at the shelter, our goal is to meet basic human needs of safety, shelter, clothing, food and water. Through other programs at Sagatawa, we offer the rest of the support. So through our outreach services, we work with clients to develop a case plan, and it's centered around the individual client. And we continue to provide those wraparound supports, even if clients are housed. Our goal is to keep clients housed as long as we can. Ultimately, we want their stay at the shelter to be a short-term stay. And we want to ensure that those wraparound services are there. And case planning looks very different for each individual. I know a lot of the conversations in the community are, well, I see the same people on the street. Well, the case plan speaks differently, and as frontline workers, there's a different story there. One example of that is we have one client who's chronically homeless that we've housed 6 times in the last 2 years. But due to individual challenges, that housing wasn't obtainable for a long period of time. So we are continuously working to house our clients. Another success story we've had with client planning is a client that came from our shelter from a different community. He stayed 3 days, and now he has full-time employment, has stable housing, and we see him probably once a month just for a check-in to see how he's doing, and he's doing amazing. So that is our goal for all of our clients. And then when we look at increased crime, like I said in the letter, homelessness and the shelter is really separate from crime. Like I said prior, I've been at Sagatawa in different capacities for 15 years. And when people are saying there's so many new faces, there's not. And being on the front lines for that amount of time, a lot of the clientele that we are seeing is just that. It's visual now, whereas before, prior to the shelter, there was a lot of hidden homelessness in Peace River, and Mark can probably attest to that through the surveys that Reaching Home did and the Rural Development Network. Is a lot of the homeless population that we had wasn't sleeping rough. They were sleeping in unsafe situations or couch surfing. So at Sagatawa, we haven't really seen an increase, but rather there's a safe place now where people can go. And so that's really important to note as well. Also, with it being a visual problem now, a lot of the solutions that come to the table are often making it criminal or shutting down shelters, putting anti-homeless infrastructure in place, and that's not the solution. And even as Canada as a whole, there is a whole national housing strategy, and those aren't even on the table because the emergency shelter is really the first step of all these other programs for transitional housing, for independent housing, for anything housing related. The shelter is where the clients are going to make their first point of contact. The last thing I wanted to add, I think it's really important when we're having these conversations that we're also having representation from the client themselves. because those conversations aren't happening with clients. We're having the conversations, we're putting all these strategies in place, but ultimately there is no voice at the table for them. And even as we sit here as advocates for that population, I have no idea what it is to be homeless. I've never been in that situation, so I can't speak to that. But I do have some client testimonials that I would like to read about the shelter and about the importance of it in our community. So one client said, "Without the shelter being here on cold nights, I would be sleeping on the street. I have been assaulted many times while living on the street. The Sagatawa shelter is a safe place for me to sleep, eat, and be safe." Another client said, "There are people who need a place to go to feel at home until they find a safe place of their own. The shelter is a place to pass through." Another client said, "The shelter provides a warm, safe place, a place that's always open to those in need, and a nice warm meal where you are treated equal and with respect. I always feel safe, loved, and understood there." The last one was, "The Out of the Cold shelter provided through the Sagatawa Friendship Society in Peace River is much more than a place to warm up for a night. It's familiar faces and warm smiles after a long day of walking. It's a hot cup of tea to calm a mind constantly in survival mode." So those are just a few. And the shelter is really important in our community and to the clientele we serve. I know a lot of the work that we're doing currently is being overshadowed by encampments and by crime in Peace River. But I would like to remind everybody that not all homeless people are criminals, and there are homeless people that don't engage in that behavior at all. Do you have anything to add?
Don't know if I need to move this or not. Okay. So some of you, I think, were in council when we presented back in the fall of 2019 about starting the shelter, and that started because of an encampment that the town was having an issue with, and bylaw had come to me in my professional capacity to help with dealing with, and that's how Mark and others got involved in starting the shelter, and it was successful. Thankfully, Sagatawa took it on and has been running it very successfully with more funding than I thought we could ever get. Still always need more, of course. But they've definitely made a difference in the people's lives in this community. The people who have been the hidden homeless now have meals. They don't have to look at criminal ways to be fed necessarily, or to stay warm. And that was an issue previously, and I'm sure there's still some of it. I'd like to remind people that Sagatawa is not responsible for what people do outside Sagatawa's doors. And we've definitely felt sometimes a bit of the ownership. People think we have control over this population, and we certainly don't. We definitely work with them through many different programs that they do. And the successes are amazing. We used to have at least 1 or 2 people freeze to death on the streets here every year. That hasn't happened since the shelter opened. So I find it concerning when there's questions of whether the town would support the shelter. Granted, you have concerns about homelessness, you have concerns about crime. I think you need to remember those two are separate issues. Crime is not only committed by people who don't have homes to live in. Crime is committed all over the place by many different walks of life. It's a problem throughout this country. The drug epidemic is throughout the country. It's not just Peace River. Anywhere you look in the media, that's what you're seeing right now. At least through Sagatawa, there's that stepping stone to get them help, the people that need and can accept the help. But we're working with a population that's fallen through the cracks. So not everybody can be housed. Although they're going to keep trying. The staff there are very dedicated to try and ensure they can get these people into homes or somewhere safe. But yeah, I think we should open up for questions.
Thank you. I think, well, part of the reason council put forth a motion to get more information from Sagatawa was just to basically learn more about the program. And there's definitely things that we as counselors aren't privy to in terms of the internal workings of how the programs actually work at Sagatawa. So you've definitely given us a good overview this evening, and I think highlighted some of the mindsets on all sorts of people, and homelessness, crime, for sure, are a definite concern, not only in our little town of Peace River, but all over the country and the world, really, as you expressed there, Carissa. One question I would have, just to clarify, when you said there's, I don't know, there was 4,000 visits during the summer and 76 service visits during the winter. I went to the website that you mentioned there, and I maybe didn't dig down far enough, but as you said, the rurals are all condensed into the rest of Alberta number. Okay, so just for everybody's information, what do they call that? Is it service visits or the use of the shelter? There was two little, anyways, Peace River was no different than the rest of the province in terms of that percentage. It was Edmonton, Calgary, 73, 74, and Peace River was 75. And that was shelter usage, which I guess says we're in the rest of the province. So the rest of the province is the 75, which is a little more than the usage in Calgary and Edmonton. That's my interpretation anyhow. So that was one thing I found good to know. But these individual visits, so say somebody comes in the morning for, I don't know, some food of some sort, they go out, come back, that counts as 2 visits.
Mhm.
And if they go out for, I don't know, a coffee someplace else, that's 3 visits if they come back. Okay.
Yes, so that's what we consider a service visit. The individual clients are the individuals counted once for the whole year.
Okay, okay. And I guess the other thing that is part of the background information here, you mentioned who we consider or somebody considers to be local residents of Peace River. And my impression is most of the time people would say it's not Peace Region, but Peace River Town when they're talking about that concept. And what I'm understanding from what you said tonight, that it's really Peace Region that is considered a local. So if the mobile outreach or one of the outreach programs transports people from the Correctional Institute to their local community, Peace River's local community could be Grimshaw, it could be someplace in Northern Sunrise. That would all be okay. And I think we sometimes forget that when we're talking, so it's good to clarify. So thank you. Counselors, some questions? Deputy Mayor?
About gathering the information on where these people reside. I know you don't have to because of with your funders, but would that not be helpful information to have so we could dissect what amount is coming from the jail and what is coming from within our town limits, and that way we could, you know, see how much of the outside problem is affecting us?
That's not something that would be helpful at this time, just when we're applying for grant funding. That's not something they even look for. It's often considered similar to like the women's shelter or the hospital, where we know other communities are bringing, or other community members are coming here. But as of right now, that's not something that we feel would be helpful, and talking through the funder if they don't feel that's necessary either. And as far as PRCC, so that is one stat we do track now that we are doing transport. And I did put it in my original letter, but so far we have transported 59 individuals home. So when clients are being brought to our shelter, they're not staying from PRCC, unless of course they live in Peace River, then we have no control.
I'd just like to add too, I don't think people realize that Sagatawa transports people out of the community on a regular basis that they are not paid to do. So they have a contract with PRCC for recently released inmates. But if any person that is unhoused or stuck here in Peace River is working with Sagatala. They have often brought them to their home communities without any funding to do so.
And that's also included, taking clients to treatment or detox centers also.
Councillor Boychuk?
I'm super excited to see what's happening with the transitional housing. Do you guys have a date or an opening time when these units are gonna be in place?
So as of right now, we don't have a date. We are hoping within this fiscal year, so that would be, our fiscal year ends March 31st. So we are hoping before then, but of course it is funding dependent.
And are you guys working with the new therapeutic living unit? Are you collaborating in any way at PRCC with this, with workers and stuff like that?
We're not collaborating on that specific project yet, but we do have an outreach program with PRCC now where one of our staff at Sagatala will be going into PRCC to provide programming. So that will start right away.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Good?
Yeah, one question I have is how often are you guys full and unable to provide services to people or not in a position of being able to house individuals that need it?
So we haven't faced that yet where we've been at capacity. We've been close. Typically, we see more people coming in for meals and then leaving after that. But so far, we have never met our full capacity at the shelter.
Okay, that's actually very good to hear. One of the things that is a sort of a difficult conversation is you talked about you're not responsible for the behavior of people when they're not in Sagatala, and I absolutely agree with that. You're absolutely not. But as councillors of the town of Peace River, we're responsible to the citizens of the town of Peace River, not to the citizens of Slave Lake, High Level, High Prairie, wherever. We're also not responsible to a great extent for, you talk about falling through the cracks. Every program has people that fall through the cracks, but that's not our responsibility necessarily to fill the cracks when they're not in our mandate. So, well, I recognize your, and it's probably as much of a contradiction for you as it is for us. Because we see the problems that are happening all through the country. We see all of that kind of stuff. But as the town of Peace River, we can't solve all of that. We're trying to solve problems that we see in our community for the people that we know. And the communication I've had from some of the people that you serve is that a lot of the people that are here now may not be different, certainly behaving differently. And some of them have indicated how terrified they are of the people that are here now that didn't used to be here. So I think it's inaccurate to say that the new people aren't here. They are. They are criminals. They know what they're doing. It's a profession. It may be their chosen profession, but that's fine. And when you talk about not criminalizing homelessness, there's no intention on anybody in this council to criminalize homelessness. But there's also no intention, I would believe, on this council to say that the fact that a person's homeless gives them a justification for criminality. And I'm not talking about some minor stuff. I'm talking about people smashing windows. I'm talking about people going into stores and having a 60-second shopping spree where they go and fill up their buckets full of stuff. I'm not going to justify that under any circumstances. So we see them as separate too. I'm a bit difficult, I'm having a bit of difficulty telling you this, but I'm telling you honestly so you understand a bit of where I'm coming from. I have, and everybody here on this council knows that, I had a really wonderful history with lots of drugs. I know what that's all about. I've driven people out of town willingly who wanted to go. I've fed people on the street because they need it. I have tons and tons of sympathy and respect for people that are having a really, really tough time. I have less sympathy when they start turning on other people and causing them difficulty. And we see business people in town who are trying to feed their families, who are finding it very, very difficult to maintain their business and their livelihoods with the criminality that's going on. So we have no intention of making criminality, of making homelessness a crime. And we're certainly willing to support anybody who's doing that, but just, and I'll put it back to that. Just as it's not your responsibility to control those people when they're outside, to some degree it's ours. And to some degree, we're going to continue with that. And as much as you may or may not believe it, not in a punitive manner, one of the things that I really liked about Apex's proposal and the discussions they had when they came and talked to us was it was the first time you guys came and they talked about the relationship building that they do with people and trying to understand what people are doing and trying to get them help. Same way, we're all here for the same reason. We want to see people helped. But I'm also not really willing to let. There's a line once that said kindness to the wolf is not kindness to the sheep. And there's some truth to that. So, and you can sort of take of everything I've said here, what we're feeling and the frustration. It's not that we're opposed to what you're doing. It's not that we have any negativity toward your organization. I've seen this great stuff you do. My granddaughter comes down sometimes for the activities you have in the afternoon. I have no negative feelings towards Saginaw whatsoever. I never would. I really don't have a lot of sympathy for the people that are making it dangerous for people in our town to walk where they want to walk, to have a store where they want to have a store and have a business that survives. We're responsible up to the envelope of the buildings. You're not responsible for your walls, but the town of Peace River is responsible up to the wall of the store to keep the town safe. That's one of the things that's in the MGA, is to have a safe community. So when we have these, I'm going to turn it a minor friction point or a minor misunderstanding. Understand that we're coming from it, I think, from the same pure and good motives that I believe you sincerely are. So I just wanted to clarify some of those thoughts.
I think with that, where my mind goes is, in those situations, are we then generalizing that all homeless people are doing that? Because I own a home in Peace River, and if I commit a crime, would I be asked to leave?
Not just for that, of course not, but, and we're not trying to say to all homeless people you have to leave, but we are saying we're not going to say yes to the criminality. And in the cleanup, how many bikes did you find down there? I mean, bikes being torn apart, etc. No, that's not a major thing, except for the people who bought bikes for their kids who are probably a little bit frustrated. So those things are not okay. They're the things that make people in our communities feel unsafe.
And I agree totally
So-
with you. On the
I want to make a clear distinction. We're not trying to make homelessness a crime. We're trying to make crime a crime.
And we definitely agree with that. Even with our mobile outreach, we tell business owners and people that are having challenges to call the RCMP. When it's criminal, we can't help. And going along with the bike theft, I think that is also a misconception. From my own personal experience, last summer, my 8-year-old nephew's bike got stolen 2 times, both times by youth in our community. And so the homeless are being the scapegoat for most of the crime that's happening. And when I look at the stats of the Peace River detachment online for this quarter, it does say that crime is going down, especially around break and enter. It's down 14%, and theft over and under 5,000 is down 31%. So crime is trending down, but again, we're here on the issue of homelessness. And I understand what you're saying, but we're trying to keep a safe place for people to be and for people to sleep and to get their basic needs met. Even when we look at criminals in institutions, they have their basic needs met. So that's the point that we're coming on, is we're providing a basic needs support service, and that's it. If we go into mobile outreach, that gets more into that line of the social disorder, vagrancy and things like that. But the shelter is not that, never was intended to be that. It was to provide safety, and then our goal was always to build off of it and create transitional housing and independent housing so that housing wouldn't be an issue. And I know Mark has said this before, but the goal of the shelter was always to progress programming so that we didn't need a shelter in our community. But we're not there yet, and the COVID pandemic set us back 10, 20 years in that.
I'd like to just comment too. I think part of the reason why we are getting a little, not upset, but concerned,
Sure.
is that we are constantly hearing crime and homelessness together from the town and from the forum that happened there not too long ago. It's being linked. And we just want to make a point that it's not linked. Just because someone's homeless doesn't mean they're a criminal. We in no way condone criminal activity, and we will always cooperate with the RCMP when they're doing an investigation. And we will always refer people to call RCMP when one of our clients has done something criminal. It's the link that we're hearing in people's conversations about homelessness and crime as being one and the same. And that's our concern.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I don't think that we see them as the same. But when you talk about your clients who commit crimes, it's a link, there's a link. And I'm not saying it's a major link, I'm not saying it's the biggest percentage or anything like that. But I'm saying you can't say that they're not connected when in fact they are. Crime and homelessness and the stresses of being homeless do, how would I put it? Make it where some people who see no other options are going to commit crimes to achieve their ends when they have to. And they see it as a have to do it, but that doesn't really help the person who had the crime committed. And so I think that they are connected. And I think what we're trying to do is to say that we're trying to do exactly the same thing you are in a lot of ways. I think these are just those areas where they kind of brush together. And to say that that there's no connection, there is. And there's also a connection between the economics that are occurring right now. Inflation, prices going up, people not being able to pay their bills, and crime. There's a connection there. There's all kinds of connections, but you can't solve them by denying the connections. So I've had my more than fill, so. But not of you, but of me.
Other councillors who have not yet spoken, Councillor Ford.
Thank you. Just to reiterate on Councillor's good comments, I 100% agree with your comments. With that being said, the good news stories that you shared with us today with those letters, I wish that would happen with every individual that Sagatawa should serve for clients. I'd like to see that outcome from everybody. Now, some of the comments I know Mayor Manzer commented on, I think you answered my question. So you're serving meals to individuals that are not just staying at the shelter. Okay, because that's one of the concerns that has been brought to my attention from the public. I get multiple phone calls about it. So as you're well aware, I've been involved in cleaning up some of the abandoned encampments, the ones that burnt down, especially this one that we just did on the weekend, and you wouldn't believe what we found down there. But not tying that, like, there again, I'm going to agree with Councillor Good's comments because it is somewhat interlinked. But when you have individuals come from an encampment that's in that kind of behavior, and it's not your responsibility for what they do outside of the shelter, but they're lining up like you, because you see them coming from the encampment, they go get breakfast, they leave, they go back. So you're counting that as a, what did I heard?
Service.
As a service. Okay. Then they go back to the encampment or whatever they're doing, and then they come back at the supper time, and it's like a continuous circle. So one thing that I can tell you is that some of the clients that have been using that the meals, the one tent that was taken down a couple of months ago that nobody was in, there was everything from scales, empty baggies, crack pipes, homemade shanks, knives, break-in tools, And the most appalling thing, now, one of the things we found besides the stolen property, and this is where I get at that organized crime stuff, is we found 4 handheld two-way radios. And it all went in the garbage. But anyway, like I say, I wish that every client that you helped had that good news, success story. But the other question I have is, with the inmates that are being released, okay, what time, are there multiple different times during the day that they're transported to you, or at certain times?
No, so typically, we see them in the evening, so it's been around 9, 10 PM at night. And then we transport them first thing in the morning. At 7:30, our driver comes, so it's told to them that your ride is here at 7:30. If you're not here, there's nothing we can do about that. So typically in the evening.
And how many of those released inmates choose not to take the ride
None.
and,
Everybody
and
that,
stay and use the shelter?
none. We've had everybody that's come to the shelter, in that situation where they just want to go home. Nobody wants to stay here. Usually they're ready at 7:30 at the shelter door, ready to get in the van. They don't want to stay here.
And my last comment, I don't have a clue how you're gonna answer this, but I know an individual, that works, he's a medical professional. Responded to, and I just heard this news yesterday. On Saturday. Responded to a client in the Peace River area, that will not stay in the shelter. And the comments that my friend heard when he responded to that client was they don't feel safe in the shelter because of certain other people that are staying there that are charging them money. Hence the word extortion, if I can use that word. Have you heard anything of like that happening
No,
in the shelter here?
no, we haven't.
Because that's some of the stories and this is coming from a health professional that responded to a client. Not necessarily at the shelter, but that client will not stay at the shelter because they don't feel safe. So I'm curious with that.
That's not something that we've heard. And most of the clients are in multiple programs at Sagatawa. So we have some clients that maybe don't access the shelter, but access outreach services. We've never heard that, or anything like that happening.
And there's always 2 staff on at the shelter. If they know that there's problems between certain individuals, they will always try and keep them separate sides of the room, but as you know, it's a fairly small space. It's probably about the size of this room. So, you can only get so much distance, but we haven't had many incidents that I recall hearing about any really of violence in the shelter. So whether that's happening, it's concerning if it is, but it's not something we've ever heard about.
And my last comment, so do you have any plans as a shelter for Sagatawa moving forward? So for instance, those individuals, like I say, I'd love the success stories. And I wish it happened every time. But is there any plans for the shelter moving forward that those individuals that are not, how can I put it, taking the olive branch that you hold out for the assistance, but that, like I say, feeding individuals and them not using your other services besides just getting food and going back to encampment? Do you have any plans on how to possibly take care of the residents' concerns over that?
Mhm.
Hence the word, I've heard the word from people in the community that it's an enabling action.
Mhm.
And I just want to hear your thoughts or on that moving forward.
In my opinion, granting people their basic human rights and basic human needs of food is not enabling. The behavior is a lot worse if people aren't fed, and we see that in schools, we see that in jail, we see that on the streets. Withholding food isn't the answer, nor will it ever be the answer, nor would Sagatawa ever do that. Like I said before, even if clients aren't staying at the shelter, 100% of the clients that go there for just meals are connected to either family programming, outreach services. So even though they're not sleeping on a mat there, we are in constant communication with them. And no, we don't have a plan to withhold basic needs.
It would be
Okay,
no
perfect.
different than a
Thank you
soup
for those
kitchen.
answers. It's like it's nice for the public to be able to hear you say that, especially when there is individuals coming up from those encampments where all that so-called crime is taking place. But if an individual is actually taking the time to try and help themselves, is like, that's good news. So thank you.
I don't think we should draw a distinction either between the other sources of free food in the community. There's soup kitchens and there's food banks, right? So us providing meals to people is not doing any different. It's helping keep them fed and hopefully reducing their need to obtain food in ways less desirable ways.
Thank you.
Councillor Carr, Councillor Scamhorn,
Thank you.
Councillor Scamhorn.
Yeah, sure. I can appreciate the conversation that's gone. I won't reiterate and go over where I agree or disagree. It's kind of there's no need spending all the time on that. I do understand when you say, you know, for you guys to get your grants, you don't need to report on where clients are coming from. For myself, in order to make sure that our community, like, so the downtown, the purpose of the downtown is the provision of commercial services for Peace River. And as Councillor Good said, this is another kind of role of ours, and it's one of those cracks of ours that we are responsible to fill. And so if our town is becoming a magnet for people, just, I guess you would say, wishing to live an urban nomadic lifestyle as opposed to improving their situation, and I don't disagree with the word enabling being used to a degree as well. So I would say, in order for myself personally to provide my vote, and I'm only responsible for mine, for a letter of support, that would be information that I would like to have before I can do that myself. So yes, the grant funding doesn't require that information, but personally I would require that information if I can responsibly make that a positive vote based on what my responsibilities are as a councillor here too. So those are my thoughts.
Any,
Before we could provide stats like that, we would need two things: a very clear definition of what you consider local and why you would exclude certain people as being local. How long an individual has to stay in this community to be considered local, and some funding for the time that would be needed to collect those stats.
Yeah, and those are fair points, but as was said before, in order for me to do what my role is, that's stuff that I would need. And yeah, I understand that provides challenges for you, and maybe that's impossible for you to give, and fair enough.
well, I think your presentation and the questions tonight have definitely highlighted that there's many nuances to this homelessness, crime, interconnections, or not. Certain individuals for sure do fit both categories, but many do not. And I guess our concern from the town perspective is we've had many comments over the last few years about increasing levels of not feeling safe in downtown Peace River. Businesses changing their protocols with respecting to locking their doors, letting their clients in or out, sort of thing. So it's one of the nuances that town council is aware of. And you know, we would like to help the situation as much as we can. Our hands are necessarily tied as well by, sometimes it's just straight finances that ties our hands. Sometimes it's areas of responsibility. You know, there's been talk about the criminal justice system and how that has changed over the past few years and maybe contributed to some of what we see, or somehow contribute to it, but we're not necessarily in charge of the criminal justice system either. None of us are at this level sort of thing. So I would like to thank you for your information, and I think it makes, sometimes the inner working of Sagatawa, which has been there for, I don't know, X number of years, 64, you said? Or thereabouts?
Almost 60.
Yeah, so almost 60 years. It's definitely had its changes in its ways of doing things, but it's always been there for the community in many senses. And I think conversations like this just bring more information to the general community about what Sagatawa does and what it can do, and sometimes what it cannot do for all sorts of reasons. I'm interested in the transitional housing because the more we read about, Canadian issues, big town issues, big city issues, they talk about all our wraparound services sort of thing. And the transitional housing for the homeless is definitely one of those kind of steps. And we would like everybody to be independent, but at the same time, we would like less independent when we want to tell them what to do in certain situations. So it kind of works both ways at times like that. So I think council at some point here in the near future will have a question or a discussion about the questions you asked, which about the local part of things anyhow, which are clear definition of what we consider to be local. How long we need, somebody needs to be in the community to be considered local. And the funding aspect of collecting data or whatever that would look like. So I think that would be coming up here. And I'm not sure when, but my question to you is, you had asked for a letter of support for the winter program. And when is the deadline for your need there?
So this letter is for the wildfire response, and so this contract has already started. One of their, I guess, boxes they have to check is the support from the municipality. So the funding is already here. And we most likely would be looking at another letter of support for the winter emergency shelter. As that funding usually rolls out October.
Okay, so it's sort of October, 6 months later, another October through whatever 6 months is, May, something like that. And then May to October is the summer.
Yes.
Okay, okay, thanks for clarifying that. Council, any other council board?
So just so I'm straight, so the letter of support you're looking for right now is for the wildfire evacuation support.
Yes.
Okay, and just a comment, please keep up those goodwill stories that are coming through the shelter. Keep up the good work.
We're trying.
Councilor Good?
The letter that we received on July 16th is writing letter request a letter of support for the out of cold shelter. So that's sort of getting confused on to you're saying you already have the wildfire stuff in place. Am I correct on that? So it's the out of the cold shelter support you're looking for in the letter that we're writing?
Yes, so for the emergency response for the wildfire, we need a letter of support from the town that you support the shelter and that we're zoned correctly to operate a shelter.
Okay, so basically 2 letters then, or 1 letter?
One letter,
For supporting both.
They're interconnected.
they're the same.
Okay,
The wildfire funding supports the overnight aspect of the spring.
okay, this just, my only confusion is that this letter says, I'm writing this letter to request a letter of support for the out of cold shelter.
So we call the shelter the out of the cold shelter throughout the whole year. And so the funding for the out of the cold shelter are these 2 separate grants for the wildfire response and the winter emergency
Okay.
response.
Thank you. Now I understand.
With previous evacuations, the homeless from other communities have been housed there, and that's how that funding is. And also anybody that's evacuating can stay there.
Sure.
We've definitely had people stay there that, are not your typical shelter clients, but someone broke down on the side of the road and they didn't have enough money for a hotel, so they come and stay there. So that's great.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's good.
And with the wildfire too, we actually met with representatives from the nations that evacuated by high level. So our community is accepting evacuees now, and they are aware of the programming we provide, so those conversations have started happening already as well.
Thank you. And I guess the other thing, that would be helpful probably to our, townspeople as well as council is just, a continual, let's have a chat once or twice a year probably, you know, and then we're hearing how things are going at Sagatawa and its many programs. And like I said, especially the transitional housing, which is a big new step, or could be. And you'll hear some of what we're hearing too. So thank you very much, and thank you for the work that you do. And I hate to say it, but keep plugging along sort of thing, because it is sometimes days like that. So thank you again.
Thank you for all the engagement.
So a question of admin. Mrs. Miller, this will come back to us, the ask for the letter and that discussion and forward going. Okay. Yeah, okay, thanks. Okay, next up, we have bylaws, and the first one is code of conduct bylaw with Ms. Parsons.
Me. So the council code of conduct bylaw is coming before you again, as it says in the report, at the May regular council meeting, there was a motion to revise the bylaw to be a little bit shorter. As you will see from the attached bylaw, it is not as short as had been requested. In my professional opinion, to get an adequate and clear bylaw, I don't think it could be the 4 pages. However, we've worked hard to reduce it. So a couple of things I noted in the report. So we have reduced it from 19 pages to 15 pages. Our bylaws are not printed on standard margins, so the request for direction is close to a standard margin page, but our bylaws are offset a little bit. So if you do reset the margins to normal, it gets even shorter to 13 pages, which a lot of bylaws nowadays, if you look online, are in the normal margin page. So when you're looking, the comparison is a little bit different. And then some of the process and just normal standard clauses of a bylaw also take up a significant amount of page space. So the definitions and preamble of your bylaws, 2.5 pages. And then the complaint procedure, investigation, sanctions, and the normal closeout portions of the bylaw is 7.5 pages. So we're looking at 10 pages altogether there, with a total then of 15 for the body of the bylaw. And we're not out of the norm by any means. There are councils and municipalities that do have bylaws that are quite short and up to 4 pages long. However, I find some of them to be lacking in direction or lacking in some of the required clauses from the regulation. And many of the larger municipalities, you know, City of Edmonton, City of Lethbridge, City of Grand Prairie, they're all, you know, within the 13 to 20 pages long. So it's not out of the norm to have a long council code of conduct bylaw, and it protects council and it gives you more clear direction. However, the other version that was brought forward was a little bit wordy, and there were some extra clauses that were not required. So some of that has been removed to make it a little bit cleaner and a little bit shorter for council. I can go through them individually, or how would you like to review the bylaw amendments?
I'm kind of thinking generally, people have had a chance to read it, so they should be able to ask questions. So Councillor Good?
That's what I was going to say, well, there's actually gonna. You had a chance to read it. There's an awful lot of crossed out text and then added text, and one thing I want to say is thank you for the work you've done on it, because I could see there was an incredible amount of work done. But and this is just personal. I don't believe that I've had a chance to really, because it came in on Friday. I don't believe that personally I've had a chance to really go through it and say, okay, where was it, where is it, et cetera. So I'm just gonna put that out there that I don't think there's a rush on getting this done tonight. So I wouldn't mind having some time to digest it. And I don't know if that means the motion to the table or something like that, or I'll make a motion if we'll have a discussion around that. I'll make a motion to table to the next meeting so that we have time to take a look at it. And that's not with any criticism to what I see here, because I'm very serious when I say you've done a great job.
Thank you very much. If I may interrupt, I'm actually not seeking first reading this evening. I am just requesting direction to bring this forward to the next meeting for further consideration and discussion. I didn't anticipate we would be ready to go this afternoon, or this evening, sorry.
So you do want comments though, or what?
Yes, if anyone has comments, feedback, any additional amendments that they would like to see in the bylaw, I would really like to hear about them.
Just one. Yeah, we'll shut up overall.
Okay,
I thought you did, I think you did a really good job. I'll say to my own satisfaction, I can't speak for anybody, but I think you put the gift section, which I had personally had some difficulty with and some conversations about. I think you worded it very, very well, where the responsibility is on the person who's doing it to do it within a certain character or whatever, and I'm totally good with it. So I just wanted to say I appreciate the work you did on that.
Thank you, Councilor.
okay, Deputy Mayor?
I'm just trying to find the gift section here. I didn't mind what you did either. It just confuses me though when it, I just need to find the clause here. The heck is it? Right here.
Which one is it?
The provision of gifts and donations. So ensuring that to a reasonable member of the public, it would not appear to imply favoritism or bias on the part of the counselor in or being gratitude or influence. So how can I can't control who asks me for a donation. So I'm not really sure how you're gonna control that, who you give to, or like, I'm just clarity there.
So, a reasonable member of the public is fairly defined in just civil law. It's just when you look at something on a basic level, would a reasonable person, understanding what I understand of the Municipal Government Act or the Council Code of Conduct or how councils is operate, would a reasonable person feel that me giving this donation is in any way, seeking to influence this person or group or individual. So typically, probably not, right? You would say, I'm giving this donation. It's pretty clear that I'm donating because I support this group and they're a great group and I want to provide my support to them. No reasonable person is going to say, well, Deputy Mayor Shannon did that because she also wants to buy everybody on the board. That wouldn't be, and something I said in the other section, under the Council Code of Conduct filing a complaint, the reason that it stays with council first is because this is your council code of conduct. This is council governing themselves. So if somebody did file a complaint and said, Deputy Mayor Shannon did this donation and I think it was inappropriate, council can look at that and say, no, we know Deputy Mayor Shannon, we know she always has supported this group and she supports community groups and is perfectly within her right to want to give a donation to this group. I'm sorry, we're not going to move forward with that. It is okay for a counselor to act as an individual person and want to support this group. They're not trying to, as anyone else might. Does that help?
But is it not still covered under our conflicts and all that, all the other stuff in here? Like, I'm just not getting why it has to be its own.
Doesn't necessarily have to be its own.
Yeah, that's just one thing I find it's kind of redundant having it in there when it's covered in all the other, how a counselor should act.
I do think it is a little bit different in a conflict of interest. That usually, it's a nuance of it, but conflict of interest, you're making a decision, you're gonna have to make a decision, and that usually means you're at the council table making a decision. This could be a little part of the decision. Do I have a conflict of interest because I'm donating to the X club because I'd like them forever or something, or they're doing a good job? Like, it is connected, but conflict of interest is an even bigger thing, I think, but.
But it's also covered in other parts of this thing, not only conflicts of interest, there's other sections in here, interactions with council members, staff and the public, for instance. We all know that we're not supposed to do things out of. So that's why I just don't get, I find that redundant because it's covered in all the other places in this thing and under the MGA.
I guess in looking at this code of conduct, one of the things, in my opinion, that it's supposed to do is to tell counselors and the general public something about counselor expectations with respect to behaviors and things they do or how they do it. And I'm thinking, brand new counselor comes in here and he's asked by the X Club to donate. Does he do it or does he not do it? Does he? It's almost like if he does it and another counselor questions it, then it leads to a big thing. So why not put it up front and get it over with? I'll let Ms. Parsons and then Deputy or Counselor forward.
So that's that piece I was speaking about a little bit too, about not being able to shorten it and including some stuff that's a protection of council and a clearer guidance to council, because we do get these nuanced questions and these one-off questions. Well, can I do this and can I do that? And what does the, council code of conduct bylaw say, or what does the procedural bylaw say? And sometimes when it doesn't specifically reference, then it becomes a little bit more challenging to answer that question specifically, and it becomes a more interpretation of generalized sections of the bylaw. So in this case, it's just giving some general guidance about the giving of gifts, and it's not precluding you from doing it, and it's not saying you can't, it's just saying to use your reasonable discretion as to its appropriateness, but certainly not allowing you to do that.
Counselor Ford, you had.
No, I just wanted to say I do support Councillor Good's idea of bringing it back at a future meeting. I didn't have a chance to read this. I skimmed over it at work. I was busy with family Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so I didn't have a chance to read this while I was at work today. But I do know that there's stuff that's in the code of conduct that's already covered in the MGA, and there's also stuff that there's a public document that's released by Alberta municipality, but from the municipal government.
Yeah.
And it's a guide for councillors that lists all this do's and don'ts that are in it, but
there's also regulations.
Yeah.
that define what should be in the code of conduct.
yeah, exactly.
Is that too. So I mean, I think we all want time, I do. I want time to take a look at all those things. What are the requirements? What are the things that are needed? So.
I would like time to read it and then compare it with the NBA and compare it with the other municipal government handles that they have. Because we're all given to that. You get it at Muni.
All the regulations.
Yeah,
too.
the regulations, yeah. Because there's certain stuff that has to be in there.
Ms. Parsons?
Yes, absolutely. So a couple of things. Once you do get a chance to go over this, in my comments in the marked up version of the bylaw, it goes through and specifically outlines which ones are required by the regulation, and the regulation is attached at the very end of this, so you can see. It was also very interesting in some of my research and looking at it, some of the clauses that are required are clauses that are specifically listed in the MGA. And so I don't know why then they require them if it's already in the FGA, but there it is, they do. So they're in there as the requirement of the regulation and then I guess backed up by the MGA, so. But yes, you will find, and I do also believe if you go back to the May meeting, the May 13th meeting where we talked about this, that AB Munis and RMA document guidebook that you're referring to is also attached to that report.
Okay, those that haven't spoken, Councillor Carr,
No, I was just hoping for more time to review it, but we're already there, so thank you.
Councillor Scamahorn. Okay,
Yeah, just a question from the May meeting. Sorry, just a question from the May meeting. Councilors wishing to see some changes were going to submit those. Was there anything that came out of, was there a significant amount of that received by administration, and were those changes able to be accommodated into this new version?
I might defer that a little bit to CAO Miller. I think there was a meeting, maybe, to address some general questions, but otherwise, no, I don't think we received very much. I just based most of the amendments off of the conversation from that main meeting.
That's a fair statement, actually. Anything that was talked about, again, the requirements make it very difficult to reduce the size. And we talked about how many pages the definitions take and how many pages the investigation part is. But there wasn't much that could be removed, actually, so there wasn't a lot of brought forward.
Thank you. Councillor Boychuk, anything at this time? No? Okay, so it will come back at a future meeting is what I'm hearing, and we'll put a motion to that effect or not? Yes. Okay, and I also note that the original code was 24 pages long. So this is now 15 pages long. I did look at some of them. In particular, I remember Grand Prairie, who this says it's 21 pages long. I think Grand Prairie was one of the ones where they would put a clause in and then they'd say, go to policy such and such to find it. So if you added all that in, I'm thinking Grand Prairie's is longer than 21 pages. I guess, council, I would ask that you also think when you're going through this as to what the purpose of a code of conduct is. And in particular, I was happy to see the part about investigations and complaint procedures written the way it is at this point in time. Having experience with that, the clearer it becomes, the better it is for the council that's dealing with it. And we don't want to get in a situation where we don't say anything about how that is to happen. And suddenly we're in the situation, we have to figure it out at that point. It's not a good deal. And there's other municipalities in Alberta where I'm thinking that they have had to use their council code of conduct and perhaps they're rewriting them at some point in time as well. But thank you for all your work on this. And so it's my understanding that, and maybe this is the way I misread it here, but the page 1 of 15 was the new version with all the changes that are in the version that has the red highlights and stuff taken out. Is that the way to look at it or not?
That's right. So the 1 to 15 is the new clean version. And then I attached the red line marked up version, which compares the 2154. Not the old, not the one that's currently
May draft.
The May draft to this current 15-page draft, which is cleaner to show both of them because otherwise it can be difficult to read with all the track changes in there.
Great. It's also a bigger print, which is more
Yes.
helpful. Okay, so we are now at a point where I would ask that someone move that council direct administration to bring forward the council code of conduct bylaw. with amendments, as discussed still, to a future meeting for consideration of first reading. That's
I think you could take out the with amendments as discussed, since there were
Okay.
no amendments discussed, we'll just bring it forward for future consideration.
okay. Well, I'll leave it to whoever might bring forward the motion.
Sure. I'll move the council direct administration to bring forward the council code of conduct bylaw to a future council meeting for consideration of first reading.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, it is carried. Thank you, and Ms. Parsons, look forward to the next draft or next version. And I guess that will be the version because we would vote on it at that point in time. Okay, next up, we have unfinished business, and we don't have any. New business, though, we have criminal record check fee update with Mr. Mugford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're a little faint, but not bad.
Okay, I'll try to speak up. Just a very brief update. In April 2024, the town began collecting revenue from fees for the issuance of criminal record checks. The purpose behind this fee is to recover a portion of the costs associated with municipal employees working at the detachment. The town employs 3 staff to support the detachment operations, and this fee will offset a small portion of those costs. Initially, the fees were approved at a rate of $25 with a reduced fee for volunteer applicants of $10. Subsequently, council removed the $10 fee for volunteers. From April until June, so for 3 months, it's actually a little bit under 3 months because we started a little bit into April. The town collected about $10,500 in revenue from 420 applications. Additionally, there were 6 applications processed through the volunteer rate. Initially, a couple of them were at $10 and then the rest were at $0. Are there any questions from council?
So the 420 applications included some volunteers and some needed for the job?
No, Madam Mayor. So there's 420 paid applications, and then there were 6 additional that were identified as volunteers.
Okay, thank you. Any further clarification? Okay, then perhaps someone could move this for informational. Okay, Councillor Ford moves, he moves that council accept the criminal record check fee update for information. All those in favor? Okay, thank you, Mr. Mugford.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the ongoing Peace River Peace Regional Hot Tub update. Ms. Bell.
Unfortunately, continuing ongoing. It's with significant disappointment I present to council this briefing note this evening, identifying that the hot tub replacement project has been canceled by administration at this time. We did tender the project in May with a closing date of June 27th. We received 1 bid of a total of $1.3 million, which is $550,000 over the $750,000 approved budget. Therefore, we've canceled the project to date, going back to the drawing board, and we'll have further conversations with council during the budget process to have a conversation for 2025 capital budget to reevaluate this project. Not the outcome that any of us were looking for.
I'm sort of asked once a week about it, so I'll report back.
This is not the update I was hoping to provide today.
So basically, the hot tub has been out of commission for going on
Over 2 years, I believe now, and I might even be a little short. Yeah, I'm in slight denial of how long it's been going on.
I think I am as well.
Well, yeah, we've been, no, we were reopened, after COVID, 2021, 22, and that's when we discovered the significant leaks. So we might be still around the 2-year mark. But this will extend it, unfortunately.
Okay, so I see that we have a different discussion perhaps on this aspect or something about this topic later on. So I guess any other points right now, or I would ask that someone move that council accept the Peace Regional hot tub update for information. Councillor Carr so moves. All those in favor?
Thank you.
It is carried. Thank you, Mrs. Bell. Okay, next up, we have Mr. Fisher with the decorative crosswalks painting policy.
Good evening, council. So I think there was maybe a little bit of a hiccup with the agenda package where my request for direction was just, all that was included was the original request for direction for this item. So we're gonna walk through what I prepared beforehand, not realizing that it wasn't uploaded. So earlier this year, we received a written request from the Peace River Pride community group to paint one of the crosswalks in a decorative fashion. Administration didn't have a policy to kind of guide us on how to proceed with that ask in a timely fashion. In 2017, we did a trial sidewalk with this. I think we've done others since. Administration prepared a draft policy and engagement in 2018. The community kind of gave us over 500 responses in the engagement. There were some positive themes. Groups should be able to, or should have to fund these initiatives themselves, so they're not fully burdened on the taxpayer. The policy should allow for a wide variety of groups to apply, not just limited to the Pride designs only. There was an ask about maybe better quality materials being used, if possible. The volunteers should be responsible for the upkeep costs on the crosswalk. Just because it gets done once doesn't mean that administration should have to take that over in perpetuity. And then it should still be identifiable as a crosswalk. The majority of the responses to the public engagement basically indicated that this was exciting, it was creative, and it should be repeated by the town of Peace River in the future. Since sort of the pilot project and this draft policy was brought forward, and I'm not sure what happened to it. There are a lot of other communities that do similar programs. The city of Edmonton has Vibrant Streets. City of Calgary has Paint the Pavement, where they do art installations, not just at crosswalks, but for like intersections, alleyways. And they all have requirements and guidelines to kind of guide a whole variety of art installations and visible things. So using some experience from these larger programs, the draft policy that was proposed, I think I would revise it as administration to change a couple of things. First one would be to remove the requirement for thermoplastic paint or traffic paint in general for non-standard crossings. By and large, a lot of the communities that do these kind of art installations are using household latex paint. They're easier to apply. There's a lot less issues with safety. Thermoplastic is actually like almost a two-part epoxy. It's fairly specialized in application. So I wouldn't recommend that as use. Provide options for standard crossings and not just full zebra location crossings in the policy. So it opens up other crosswalk locations or intersections that could potentially be used. Provide clarity on the colors that might be used. We'd want to avoid sort of ones that are really prominent in traffic control, like the blue circle arrows, yellow lines that kind of line up with like center line. We'd want to avoid some of those in the designs. We'd
I would recommend that the requester of the decorative sidewalk arrange for painters instead of it being done by public works staff as proposed. We're still learning how to do straight lines. We don't need to be adding words.
By the way, good repair up.
Yeah, it's part of learning, right? We screw up, we fix it, we get better. So, and then require reasonable lead time ahead of applications to review, provide guidance and revise the design, or review the design. I would like at least 3 weeks to review it. You know, we've got to circulate it around for traffic control. If they've got any closure that they need, we have to kind of bounce it by the fire department stuff, and all that takes time. So even with our road closure requests for events, we're looking for at least 2 to 3 weeks just to circulate that around, make sure we get the right feedback and get it into the planning. If you log into the agenda package right now, there's some examples from the city of Edmonton for a bunch of different kinds of designs from their Vibrant Street program. So different kinds of arts. They've got Every Child Matters art in here. So just lots of different kinds. Paint the Pavement in Calgary. They're doing whole intersections like in the center of the intersection to kind of color, create art in communities and stuff. I would be looking for kind of specific guidance or direction from council on a couple of items. The first one being, are the general comments okay with council to incorporate into a revised policy of that?
So, maybe, you asked the question, we respond, is that what you want at this point in time?
That's probably the cleanest for the conversation.
Okay, good to know. So your first question are the common comments generally acceptable by council to incorporate into the revised policy? So those comments are the 1 through 5 that you listed before, or something else?
Nope, those would be, well, they would be it. So groups should have to fund the initiatives themselves, not be funded by the taxpayer. Policy should allow for a wide variety of groups to apply, not limited just to pride designs. Better quality materials should be used if possible. That one I am gonna work with, I've got a different question to address that one. Volunteers should be responsible for the upkeep costs, and it should still be identifiable as a crosswalk.
So we're looking at the 5 bullets there. So councilors, at this point in time, do you have anything to say about that? Better quality materials, does that mean the paint is outlandishly expensive?
Not the way I'm hoping to propose it later on in discussions.
Yeah, we're doing number 1 of that right now. Councilor Boychuk?
So what happens if it ends up being an eyesore? Who's gonna look after that city? There was something wrong with the paint or something like that. It didn't fit right and it ran all over the place. Rained on it, or, you know what I'm saying?
We black it out with black paint like I did on those crooked ones, and maybe try again or not.
Or the other way of looking at this is it's a sort of a 1 year, 1 season thing. And if you want to keep it up, well, you're going to have to keep repainting or whatever the material is that gets used. Councilor Carr.
You say groups should have to fund. Now, groups, would that be nonprofits? Would that be niche companies? Would that be open to anybody? What is groups?
Specifically, the comment was, in this case, the group applied to do the crosswalk. I think it's just whoever is wanting to do the crosswalk would have to fund that crosswalk themselves.
So like if the Legion wanted to paint their crosswalk, or the brewery, or one of the real estate companies, they would be allowed to, they would fit, as long as they fit our criteria.
I think so. Like,
Okay.
I would avoid words and text and logos, ideally, but think the idea is more art kind of crosswalk.
To that point, I would request some thought on that one. Commercial advertising is not where I saw this kind of going,
That is not where I saw it going either, your worship.
but needs to be written down if that is the case. Yeah. Any others on question 1? Okay, Mr. Fisher. Next up.
Does council wish to charge an application fee to cover the administrative costs related to reviewing applications? Like I said, there's a little bit of circulation that's gonna go around. It's probably gonna go back and forth with me a couple times, depending on how complicated it is. It might go back and forth with our public works team to help them make sure that they're setting up a safe traffic plan.
So are you talking, Councillor Scanahorn?
Sure. I think that's not a bad idea. Like, I mean, if a group is going to make the request, they're going to have the funding, and I guess we'll get to that point. They're going to have the funding in place to do it, and we could make that also potentially part of just a deposit on their actual crosswalk, anyways. But also just to prevent any frivolous applications just for something silly like, you know, the Rhino Party or Bodie McBoatface or something like that.
Other comments on question 2, Deputy Mayor?
I think it's reasonable to ask for a fee for that. There is administration involved, probably quite a bit, probably. A fair amount, I would think.
Any other comments on question 2? Okay, Mr. Fisher.
Oh, your worship, this is kind of a follow-up to question 2. Is there a threshold where council would feel that that would be too onerous to pay to apply?
I'll throw a number out. A number that sort of instantly hits me in the head is $100. It's enough that you're gonna think twice about spending it for nothing, but it's not so much that it's going to stop anybody from going anywhere or making a decision. So try it there, see what happens. That's my suggestion.
Going once, twice, 3 times, $100 seems to be a flavor. Getting some nods. And it's justifiable, right? That has to be the case too, I guess. Okay,
And just to be clear, you'll get a final say or look at it before it gets approved too. So we go through it and you go, oh, this looks low now. We can change it, or if it looks too high, change it that way too. Is council okay with the CAO and mayor approving special requests for sidewalks? Kind of like we do with special flag requests where they come in. We might do some coordination internally to verify things that we have the flag and we can hang it. That we have staff available, but the final approval with the CAO and mayor, or does council want to delegate that entirely to administration?
I'm okay with it.
Councillor Ford.
I would be fine with it, just simply that the policy is gonna be laid out, so the mayor and CAO can make that decision, just like the flags.
I guess I'll speak into this one. It also, if the mayor has something to do with it, it can get into communication and highlight whatever group it is or something like that. We have a strategic plan which speaks to diversity, et cetera, and it could tie into that element too, actually. So mayor and CAO. At this point, it looks like a nod.
Next question is council okay with administration requiring their requesters to arrange for their own traffic control and safety? Though we may provide barricades in accordance with how we've been managing road closure for events to date, where we drop off barricades and then they're responsible for setting them up and putting them down to the side and picking them up afterwards.
Councillors? So Does this mean, first of all, it won't be on Alberta transportation type roads at all, including streets that they are in charge of, right?
Correct, I can't approve anything for that. That is on Alberta Transportation Highway, so that'd be basically all of Main Street, across from Heart River Bridge up to the hill, and then obviously Highway 2.
Okay, and so if the town provides the barricades, it's like having a walk down Main Street. Barricades are provided, but the people have to arrange somebody to man the barricades while things are happening. That's kind of what you're thinking?
Correct, or they would have to provide their own traffic control people if they're doing lane closures and stuff like that.
So is the town okay with that? They've said you can put this painting on this crosswalk, do it at your own time sometime rather. And we're okay with all that aspect, or do we have any say in that?
Your worship, I think that we would work with them to coordinate a time like we do with an events road closure. That's part of wanting to circulate it and having time, reasonable notice. Is that road closure piece would be part of the circulation that goes on with one of these applications.
Any other council board?
And just to comment on the Mayor Manzer's comment about transportation roads. So I do remember, I think it was my first term of council, we actually had 2 crosswalks painted in a few years. One was the one by the flags. We had an Indigenous crosswalk that was painted, and I do believe there was right across from ATV, the crosswalk there was a Pride one there. But just to comment on transportation, that includes crossing Main Street or crossing transportation road, but that's also running along. So for instance, going from 12th at Davis Center or the gas station right across the street, going across the street running east. So you couldn't do a crosswalk along Main Street or across, if I'm correct. That's what we were told before.
You're talking right on Main Street, right?
Yeah, so basically Main Street, a crosswalk can't be painted across Main Street, but it also cannot be painted along Main Street. So for instance, between the town office and Fitness on the Go, you can't have a crosswalk there because it's running along.
That is a correct interpretation, Councillor Ford. No, they would view that road as if there's an entirety. So they actually, when we need to get them repainted, they send them to the inspector and book the contractor to paint them.
Okay, anything else on that aspect?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my last question would be, if being that we're talking about transportation, is there selected crosswalks in town that you're looking at doing this in the policy? That are we talking about downtown? Are we talking in residential neighborhoods? Or are we just talking like the downtown core?
I actually think that was question number 5, was seeking your direction on that. So how open do you want to make this program? I haven't identified particular crosswalks at this time. I was going to leave it up to the people wanting to do a crosswalk and apply for certain crosswalks. I think we could set up some criteria, but are there certain areas in the municipality or on municipally owned roads where council does not wish to see sidewalk or?
Councillor Good, you had a comment? No?
Yeah, kind of, just, I think it depends to a degree on the application, and the reason I think that's why there should be a discussion between the CAO and the mayor, because let's say somebody wanted to put a kid flavored crosswalk or a student flavored crosswalk in an area that's over a sidewalk they have or a crosswalk. I don't have a problem with that almost anywhere there's a school. So to my mind, leaving it more open, but having an agreement, like a veto agreement, the mayor and the CAO would have that discussion about this is not a good plan or this is a good plan. I mean, people can always appeal those kinds of decisions to council if they wish, but I think leaving it in the CAO and mayor's hands is enough of a control for me. I don't need any more than that.
Other comments?
Just one more, it just kind of brought up a concern is if you're talking about school themed crosswalks, is there also, this would be part of your investigation, I guess, but is there any liabilities if you change a crosswalk in a school zone? Like, is there legislation from the province on how a crosswalk in a school zone is supposed to look like? And reflective material in the paint and all that kind of stuff, or can you just paint over a crosswalk in an existing school zone with the theme?
No, so there is, the way a lot of the programs are structured, Council Ford, is that, if it's a full zebra crosswalk, for example, where they've got the regular bars. The white bar needs to be the specified traffic paint with the reflective glass bead like we would normally do. So we would go and we would paint and apply that piece of the sidewalk or a crosswalk into the location. And then the art would go up within a couple of inches of each of those bars. So those bars are typically spaced every 2 feet. And then so they would have that kind of blank space between the zebras to kind of color. So the rest of the crosswalk would still have the reflective properties and the paint properties of the zebra crossing there. And then the same would be for the standard bar crosswalk. You would have your standard bars available. Ideally, you would have a gap between the art and those standard bars. And then the art would exist in the space that's open there. I think that's the way that most of the jurisdictions are dealing with decorative crosswalks currently. And if they're not, that's sort of the way that would be, I think. There is no standard for these decorative sidewalks or crosswalks currently in Canada. I believe the US is rolling out like a decorative program in their standards, and it will make its way to Canada eventually.
Hey, I guess I'd throw it out there. I don't know what I would think if all schools suddenly decided that their school mascot should be put on their sidewalk. I don't know what I think about that at this point in time. Because they could.
I'd be okay with that.
See, and I don't know that I would be. Anyways, just throwing that out there. To interrupt the flow of the conversation, more or less. Okay, so that was number 5, I think. We're number 6 now.
Yeah, is there a desire to look at more than just crossing locations or just working on crossing locations at this point and seeing how it goes? The specific question is, do you want to look at lanes and intersections in addition or just crosswalks?
I'll speak up. I think I'd rather just look at crosswalks and see. Keep it simple to begin with, or simple, really.
I love that approach. I just want to ask you to kiss me, but.
Okay, number 7.
This one relates to the painting products. So, like I said, the thermoplastic paint that was recommended in the first draft of the policy, it's pretty specialized stuff. Like we don't actually use that for our own work, unless we're going through a contractor. So I don't know that I would recommend it, for untrained people to be applying, not necessarily having the right equipment. So would council rather administration provide a specific list of products and colors to be used by the program, which is what sort of the city of Edmonton does? It says use these Cloverdale paints, you can buy them at these locations. And this is the product in specific colors, or would you like us to give us a little bit more flexibility where we say, you know what, use a household latex, paint, clean the sidewalk, like sweep it really good, blow it off. And then use the household latex for your art, knowing that it can just fade, but it gives the people requesting more opportunity to find products that they can use and get sponsorship from more than one kind of manufacturer or supplier.
Counselor Scamahorn?
Yeah, I would prefer either it's a good quality product that lasts a long time, like the thermoplastic stuff, and will be something that much like the murals we have around town. That's an artwork piece that's long lasting, or it's and maybe this is kind of the direction the Pride Society was going, or others might, where it's, or say River Days, for example, they wanted to paint a crosswalk plaid. It would go up, it would be up for the weekend or for the week, and it would be very easy to get rid of. And then so with that in mind, I would prefer that administration say it's this product here or that product there, and that is all. That way we don't get some kind of in between thing that's can't really be cleaned off, but it gets faded and ugly and or whatever.
Okay, I prefer to stay away from the thermal stuff. That sounds complicated for volunteers to figure out and actually enact some painting. But others? Let admin provide, or what are you thinking, Councilor Boychuk?
I just know when I participated in that, Every Child Matter walks, I don't know if it's a regulation or not, but they had to sprinkle the glass beads in there, so I don't know if we want that as a requirement, as a crosswalk had to be identifiable at night, so I don't know where they got that from, but I know they had to purchase the glass beads to put in the paint to make sure it's reflective, so.
Just on that one, if we're opening it up and not using traffic paints, you really should be adding the glass beads, because like if you're using a household latex paint, for example, which is what Calgary recommends for their art program. It doesn't have enough adhesion to bond to the beads and the road surface, so you end up with these bulk peeling things that sort of happen. So I think that if you're in a zebra crosswalk, like for the standard bar crosswalk, those standard bars with the zebra markings, those need to be traffic paint with glass beads, and those would be on administration because we're already painting those to begin with. The art piece itself probably should have it. Would be my recommendation.
Makes it easier for everybody.
CEO Miller?
Your worship, we've talked about actually trying to have the paint so it doesn't last forever, because there's ideal crosswalk spots. And if we lock it up with one organization, then it restricts or limits other opportunities or other organizations or applicants to have opportunity to put their art on a primary location. So we think even that it should be only for a certain period of time, to a maximum of 2 years or something, to allow that opportunity to then be essentially repainted or put out for some other organization to have opportunity for that visible prime location. Perhaps.
Deputy Mayor?
I thought it always was temporary. I didn't think it was there for a few years. I thought to date that all of our paintings have been temporary. I haven't.
This is a new policy.
I think the one that was painted by the flags got renewed, and I have no idea how that process came to happen, but maybe this policy needs to speak to it, because it goes to the CAO's point as well as the temporary thing.
I thought it was like an annual installation so that more people could take advantage of it.
I think we've had very few askers, and that's why they got permission to do it, and it was just done. So this is going to clarify that kind of stuff. Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, sorry, your worship, in those other programs in other municipalities, it is an annual sort of application if you want to keep an intersection refreshed. For example, in the city of Edmonton one, all applications are kind of due by the end of February. They approve or make a decision on them fairly quick so that they can line up and order materials for installing and stuff. And then in Calgary, it's you apply for one season And however long it lasts, it lasts,
Mhm.
but if you wanna go and touch it up or do something elsewhere, you have to reapply.
So I'm kind of coming to the conclusion, a good quality latex paint that fades over time, so that you either apply within whatever the policy is gonna say, or whatever. Because we all know latex in the good sun will sometimes fade. But anything further to give direction to admin on this one? Sorry, Counselor Scanlon.
Sure. Yeah, I think to avoid having something faded there for a long time, maybe the policy needs to have a sunset or a pressure wash off clause where it's like it goes on, it's on for a month, and then or however long the timeline is for say latex. That's what we're going to do, and then after that, it actually gets reset back to its original thing, so that it's not faded and of low quality for a long time. And then that way it can just be kind of dealt with once the season is over. Another question that I have, so that we've had a lot of talk about, of course, the one painted crosswalk we do have. Once we're done this policy, would that crosswalk then apply to this policy? Or is that one kind of sort of like its own trial run that exists outside the policy? Would we sort of bring that one into the fold?
Your worship, I think, part of trying to move this along when we don't have GMP and have these discussions is so we could have this policy ready for September, ideally, maybe, if they were to want to apply again for that crosswalk.
Yeah, sounds good.
But I didn't envision as an administration that we would see a request come in, run it through the policy and go that route.
And maybe admin would speak directly with that group so that there's clear communication on whatever is to happen. Anything further?
Is that the AIC then? That's
Yes. Crack,
Okay.
sort of. It was one of our
Cool.
reconciliation strategies as well, so. Okay, so perhaps someone would move that council direct administration to bring forward the non-standard crosswalk policy, painting policy with amendments as discussed to a future council meeting for consideration. Councilor Carr, so moved. Any questions? All those in favor of the motion? It is carried. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Fisher. Okay, next up, we have Apex security update with Mrs. Miller.
Sorry,
Thank you,
Madam
Your
Mayor,
Worship.
point of order. I'm just going to step away from the meeting, and Ms. Parsons will send me an email and I will rejoin when the item is over to pecuniary interest.
Okay, yes. Okay, Mrs. Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. So really, I just have a bit of a brief but good news report. So I just wanted to confirm, as everyone is aware, the patrols with Apex began a week ago today, actually. As far as administration is, the reports that we've been getting and the service has been most welcome. The reports have been very informative. They've identified surprisingly a number of encampments, at least that I was not aware of yet. So they're finding locations that are new to administration. We have met with the Apex crew a couple of times, and most recently we are working on developing a bit of a workflow on how we'll manage those encampments from the time it's identified and reported to it goes through our system, through them, through our group here. We get it cleaned up and it becomes clean and active. So once we determine all that, we're going to create a little bit of a flow chart that we can put online for the public too, so they'll understand what could be expected and timelines that people could expect if an encampment is reported to us. So we're just working through that for now. we have, you know, we've had some positive feedback. I feel the community already is feeling relief for seeing them walking around, providing some safe and security. As to be expected, we have had some negative Nellies online, but the positives are gonna far outweigh those negatives. And so we don't have a lot to report at this time, but in about a month, we will give a more detailed report on some statistics based on what's being reported to us on a daily basis. Thank you.
Great. So this is 3-month project. So basically every month we would get a summary report is what you're kind of thinking?
Yes, yes.
Councilors, questions? Councilor Ford?
These reports that are coming to administration from Apex, is there any, would it be much work for administration to email those reports on a weekly basis to all of council? So we can keep up to speed on what's going on?
Through yourself, your worship, they are administrative and operational reports, and we'll provide a summary when we do our monthly report.
Councilor Carr?
You said administration be involved once they're reported. Is there any kind of a timeline? And I know this is a very wide open question as to how long it would take for them to be told you can go ahead and tear down the encampment. And the reason I ask that is because our camping bylaw and the charter rights are kind of, and if it is identified as their residence rather than a camping space, then we may run into problems on that end. Is there a timeline between when it's reported and when it will be approached or removed or?
I'm just gonna defer to Director Bell, because we are working through those timelines as part of that flow chart, so.
Okay.
When we met with Apex, we're coming up with a standardized process so that there's consistency of when encountering these situations, whether it's they've come across them themselves or they're reported, whatever the situation is. We're looking at about a 24-hour window. However, there will be some wiggle room in that time frame because it will be dependent upon the occupants, the setup, the location. There's other factors. And it will also include the resources in the community. The most program Sectos out of the cold shelter, so they'll be a part of the overall process of engagement to ensure have some wraparound services when this occurs too. So the intent is for it to be fairly rapid, as quickly as possible. Yeah, so there isn't going to be development of this for lengthy periods of time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for that and a good start to the program. So maybe someone would move that council accept the Apex security update for information.
So moved.
Okay, Councillor Ford, all those in favor? Great. We'll now ask Mr. Scammahorn to maybe come back. We'll take a break. When do you want to take a break? After just before close? Or when? Before close, okay.
Only 20 hours, we got lots of time.
Yeah, I'm serious about. Okay, Councillors Scammahorn, are you back in business here? Okay, we might carry on while we're waiting now for him to come back, I guess. Okay, so the next item is the Regional Energy Seed Funding Contribution, and Mrs. Miller will speak to this one.
Thank you again, Your Worship. So, the request for decision before you is we're seeking approval to provide seed funding to the Regional Energy Committee that was newly formed in partnership with our neighboring municipalities and counties. The ask is for $2,000. To provide a little bit of funding. If we all provide 2,000, it gives the committee $10,000 of working cash to fund, meetings, host any invites, such as the premier coming, for discussion, and to provide, funding for any memberships, to get the group started. So the motion we're looking for is approval for payment of $2,000, and I intend to just fund that out of our economic development budget.
Thank you. Any discussion? Would someone care to move that council approve the payment of $2,000 for the purpose of providing operational funding to support efforts of the Regional Energy Committee paid through existing operating budget in the economic development sub-budget? Mr. Good, so moves.
I'll make that motion, please.
Apparently, Mr. Scammellhorn's making the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? It is carried. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have the Regional Energy Committee Terms of Reference. Mrs. Miller.
Thank you again, your worship. So I'm just bringing this forward, the terms of reference for approval that's being sponsored by Mayor Manser and Deputy Mayor Shannon. The last meeting, the group discussed the draft terms of reference. There were some changes throughout made, and from there, I thought maybe you'd like to speak to it.
Yeah, okay. So we have looked at this terms of reference before when the committee was really getting organized, but now we've had one meeting of the full committee, which consists of, as indicated here now, 2 municipal elected members of each council. In our case, it's myself and the deputy mayor and the chief administration officer of each municipality. So all 5 municipalities have that in place. Not all are choosing to send 2 elected or their admin. Sometimes, according to terms of reference, additional attendees will be asked to come to the committee and present for whatever purposes. And quorum is 1 elected official from each municipality. So we need at least 1 of the 5 to have an elected official there. The other things that were changed basically under term number 3, sharing the financial costs with membership, such as hosting presentations and all other costs to be approved by individual councils. That was new. And Deputy Mayor, anything else that was new here? I think so, right? I think it's pretty clear. Yeah. Communication, all communication will follow the approved communication plan, which is to be determined a little bit. Oh, I know. Someplace in here. Or no, it was in the minutes. I'll speak to that when we get to the minutes. So those are the changes, and basically we are coming to council to ask that town council ratify the Regional Energy Committee terms of reference as presented. Any questions on the? Somebody care to put forth the motion then? Deputy Mayor?
Move that council ratify the Regional Energy Committee terms of reference as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? It is carried. Thank you. Now on to reports. So, we seem to be reading of reports. So we have the first one up, my council event attendance report. I'll just go through the titles, and if anybody has questions on them, please ask. Next up, we have Mr. Boychuk, June attendance report. Mr. Ford's June attendance report. Mr. Good's June attendance report. Mr. Scammellhorn's June attendance report. One common thing for all of them, FCM attendance in Calgary, and I think we got different bits of information out of that, so I think it was worthwhile to attend it when it was in Calgary. But that was that one. Next up, we have the 2024 to 2029 North Peace Housing Foundation Strategic Plan. Councillor Carr, any major changes in this or something you would like to highlight?
No, a lot of comments made by the board where they like the layout of it and so on, but I think it basically is the same as it was. Correct.
Yeah.
It's very well laid out. I don't know who was involved in it, but very well done. A lot of comments on the colors too. Very striking, vibrant.
I'll make sure credit goes where it's due, and that was mostly our executive director, Tammy Vince's artistic work on that.
Great. I like the beginning part where it actually lists the housing that the North Peace Housing deals with. Like you can go there and you can tell in each community. I got that. What the housing does.
That part of it.
Good, good. But just for people out in virtual land, the main goals, I guess you'd say, are to demonstrate operational excellence. So that's dealing with infrastructure, demonstrating board of director excellence, board of directors excellence. Okay, long-term financial planning. So this is one that people see on their tax bills where each municipality within North Peace Housing is levied a certain amount to help operations and so on for some of their housing. And also to foster and maintain strong partnerships and connections. Advocacy for basically their clients, but also it seems to me that housing authorities in the province are going through, as towns do, a rather big process about aging infrastructure and maintaining and upgrading their infrastructure according to the community needs. So, and lastly, accountability. So thank you very much for sending that to us. Next up, we have the minutes of the Peace River Community Services Board meeting on May 22nd. And Mr. Scamahorn, anything that you would like to highlight from that one?
A lot of what we've got going on there that's of note is actually future agenda items on our agenda. There's one thing that did come up that the board has been working on is a terms of reference, or I guess you'd say policies around a emergency community fund. So community groups that are in a pickle, they're in a tough spot. They've had some type of event go on. These are community groups that generally have been offering an important service in the town for quite some time that now no longer can do that, or that's put in jeopardy, but has reasonable expectation to be able to reoffer that, provided a kind of an emergency injection of some funds that the Community Services Board could facilitate. So obviously there's a whole bunch of questions around that, like, how long have you had to exist, and how much and how often are we going to do this for groups? So those are things that the Community Services Board are currently working around. And in our September meeting, I'm thinking that should be pretty well fleshed out. So that's the biggest change for our information.
So I realize you don't have it fleshed out, but an emergency fund basically for operational type stuff. Is that, it's not like nonprofits already have a tax relief from their properties if they have property. So it's not that. We already do that.
No, not that. And not something like a grants to groups thing. This would exist outside of grants to groups. And I know we've had people apply to grants to groups that are in a tough spot, but that policy isn't built to deal with those kinds of things because its focus is different. So this is something that would, the mayor does ask good questions around.
I think you went mute.
Sorry, apologies. I did.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I actually
that's
did. There was a
glitch. Okay, so that was on the second set
Yeah.
of minutes, and I noticed also on the second set of minutes, there's something about recreation and cultural facilities alcohol use directive. What might that,
Oh, yes. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a door here for 2 seconds. I will answer your question. Just it got propped open here, and it's a busy place. We got like 80 kids, and there's more coming, and a bunch of staff. And sorry, and the kitchen's right beside the office here, so we're doing our best. So one thing around town facilities, parks, the arena, other areas that the town operates, oftentimes community groups wish to put on events, and many times those events would involve the serving of alcohol, whether it be concerts or that type of thing. We've got hockey games. And so there's just some clarification required around what is our role in that, what is the role of the community group in that. And we just need to really build good fences and boundaries so that we are good neighbors, I guess, in that regard. We've had things where a community group will get a liquor license for an area, and then another group will use the same area and they'll just kind of tag on to that liquor license. Is that something that we're enforcing? When are we coming into that? Do we report to AGLC on that? So it gets pretty sticky, and administration is just looking for some clarification around that the Community Services Board can help them out with.
great, sounds like a good thing to clarify. Okay, anybody else questions for Councillor Scannahorn on community services minutes? Okay, next up, we have the Economic Development Committee special meeting of June 18th. Minutes here, anything to report, Deputy Mayor or Alton?
I wasn't at that meeting. I was away in Calgary for FCM.
And the alternate, are you the alternate?
It was a special meeting that was 15 minutes and they just said not to bother coming in. It was a quick, very, very quick meeting.
Yeah, I think they need to notify everybody if there's special meetings, but anyways, any questions on that one? Or Mrs. Parsons, Miss Parsons.
I can comment on that as well. It's a special meeting, but what they've done is divided special projects up within working committees of the Economic Development Committee. So the grants to businesses and those meetings are divided up to a working group. And so just the working group usually attends a special meeting unless someone isn't able to attend, then they would invite someone else on the EDC to make sure that there's quorum. But that's why sometimes you'll see that a member isn't at that special meeting because it is a working group committee as well.
So just to clarify, the alternate would not then be considered to come?
It could be if they were needed. Yes, I believe Councillor Carr has participated in those in the past.
Yes.
But it's not always
Yeah.
necessary.
Okay.
It's just respectful of everyone's time on the committee to not always be requiring them to be at participate in every single aspect of the committee.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the RCMP Peace Regional Advisory Committee, and Mr. Ford, I think you're the member for this one.
Yeah, you bet. I wasn't able to attend this meeting, and I think I did forget to mention that to my alternate. A couple of things that are on my plate coming up is we're going to be expanding the Walker Lose It program, working with Glen Mary High School and Peace River High School to work the program into the parking lots when school gets back in. Also, we're going to be trying to have another Walker Lose It program within the town of Peace River, but that has to be organized through email because there's no meeting of it with the group now until fall. And other than that, the speed reader board is currently in Berwyn on one of their streets where they're having some speeding issues.
Any other questions from these minutes? Okay, last set of minutes is the minutes of the Regional Energy Committee of July 10th. Myself, Deputy Mayor Shannon, and CAO Miller attended this meeting. basically, we're just getting organized, but, upcoming, we're having, a meeting, time with Premier Smith, who's, coming to town, and well, I think we've been told, she's coming early in August, let's say, and waiting for an official, announcement. The 7th, you're told, okay, August 7th, and, the Energy Committee will have some time with her to talk about, energy. In this case, basically, that means nuclear. So we will be bringing some thoughts to that meeting. Also, well, that was basically, the main topic, I think. Any Deputy Mayor, anything else? Good. Yeah. Okay, any other questions on that one? Advise council to keep August 7th, open if they can for many reasons. Okay, would someone like to, move that council accept the reports 9.1 through 9.7 for information? Who hasn't made one in a while? Councillor Boychuk. Yes? Great. Councillor Boychuk, so moved. All those in favor? Note that, Councillor Scamahorn seems to have stepped out. Okay, next up, we have the information council communication package of July 12th. Hopefully you had a chance to, review this one. And, of note here, I'm just gonna go through a few. We had a letter and my response to 4D Holdings about homelessness and, theft. I have a question about, correspondence from 7 Generations Development Corporation. And they seem to be talking about some sort of housing initiative. And I was wondering if, admin is familiar with this. They're requesting our support for 7 Generations Off-Reserve Indigenous Housing Initiative. And I'm thinking that maybe, council could direct administration to find out more about this topic and see where we would go from there in the future. Should we move that? Or what's best?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're looking at me.
We're having a rather long-winded conversation here, but 7 Generations Reserve Indigenous Housing. Perhaps someone could direct administration to discover more about this particular initiative and bring back information to council. Councillor Good will so move that. Ms. Parsons, you're okay with the motion? Great. All those in favor? Great. We have another letter from Peace Regional Airport. Basically, this was a letter that was sent late in June or in June, and it was indicating that changes at the airport have fallen short of being self-sustaining. They had a loss of approximately 200,000 in 2023. We're not exactly sure if they have an ask of councils or whatever. So CAO Miller, we're following up on this one, or what's happening there?
I have a meeting scheduled with the airport manager, I believe it's July 30th, and then I will be able to provide more information.
Okay, and another one I noticed here. What I didn't notice. Yes, the Art Hub has made a request that, well, they're applying for a Northwestern Alberta Foundation grant by the Loveson family, and in order to hire a full-time arts coordinator, and they are requesting testimonials from people, letters of support. And have we provided that, or will we provide that?
We did provide a letter of support and worship, but I think we must have missed putting it in the close.
It's there, but someplace later, maybe.
Northwestern Alberta Foundation under outgoing correspondence.
Great. Okay. And other than that, did anybody have anything they wanted to bring up from that communication package? No? Okay, maybe council could move that, council accept item 10.1 for information. Mr. Carr, so moves, all those in favor? Great, it is carried. Notices the motion. Not at this point. Comments from the public. They're kind of saying no. Key communication items. So councillors, what would you propose as coming out of this meeting? Sagatawa presentation. Good information from that.
Apex Q&A.
Hot tub. Apex. Others?
The nuclear energy committee updates report.
Energy committee update. Anything else? I would like to announce that the town through me did proclaim that this is National Drowning Prevention Week. And our communications person has some media items that are up on this item.
And a video.
And a video. He's covered all the bases there. So very good. And I know at the beginning of this meeting, I thanked the Rotary or the Rotaract Club, and I think Rotary also contributed to the Plaid Days for their River Days. They're called River Days. River Days event, it went very well, as did the Peace River boating aspect of it.
Oh, one yellow flag.
Well, that sounds very good. Okay, I think we are now at a point where we might take a break for 5 minutes. So we're back here at 7:26.